Good morning and welcome to Deb Tucker Club, our first virtual installment. So this is a little bit strange and different, but I'm going to try and make it as much like it regularly is as possible. So normally we start out Deb Tucker Club with show and tell, which there's nobody here but me, so no one has show and tell. But I brought some things in to share with you. I don't know if I showed this last time or not, but this is the baby quilt that I finished making for Benjamin. And I don't think you guys have seen it yet in Deb Tucker. So here's the quilt. And I wanted to show it to you guys especially because I used a number of Deb Tucker tools. This is the V-block unit here. And then over here we have the split Rex unit. That's a ruler we've used before. And this is another V-block unit. I just trimmed the top off. So this uses some of your oldie but goodie Deb Tucker rulers. Oh, and of course I used the wing clipper too for the flying geese down there and the stars. So some Deb Tucker fun. And also it glows in the dark, which is extra cool. So we have kits for that, of course. So that's what I've been working on. The other couple fun things I brought in to share with you. I wanted to show you what I'm doing for Deb Tucker Club next time, assuming there is a next time. This is the snowdrops pattern. I don't know if you could see it or not, and I have been working on my sample. I have not finished it, but I'm hoping to have it finished before I send this out, so I'll include some pictures as well if I finish that top. I've got all the blocks done. I've got it laid out on my floor at home. I even have all the side setting triangles done. I just need to sew them all together, and hopefully I'll get to that this weekend. So I also brought in a couple new items to show you. This is called Glow Line tape. And one of our other Deb Tucker Club members told me about it. Julie Phelps was telling me about it and asking if we had it. And I didn't at the time, but I was like, that sounds really cool. I'll need to get some. So I did order some, and it came in, and it is really neat. What it is it comes with 3 rolls of tape that look like this. There's an orange one, a pink one, and a yellow one. And you can use it to mark your rulers. So it kind of like highlights different areas of your rulers. So when you're cutting something and you can't find a line, you have to use it repeatedly, especially on the Deb Tucker rulers, like the V-block ruler, when you turn it, you can never find that weird diagonal line. These would be really helpful. Let me show you up close and see if you can actually see it on there at all. So this is where I put the Glow Line tape. I outlined my 9.5-inch box, because that's what I'm going to be using to trim later today. So that's a really neat product, and it is $4.99. You get the 3 rolls of it for that price, which is pretty good. So we have those. And then I thought I'd also just point out that we got the magic fork pins back in stock. We were out of these for a while, and they are really nice and helpful for getting those seams to nest together. So they have 2 little prongs on each side and the heat resistant plastic top. So those are really nice too. And we have those back in stock. So there's all my fun show and tells for today. For class today, you should have gotten a copy of the handout. Looks like that, and it looks just like it always does. It says Spectrum Month 4. Should look very familiar because this is month 4 out of 4, so we've done this a few times already. And this month's stuff is actually very similar to what we've done in the past, which is nice. You guys should be kind of familiar with it. This shouldn't be hard. And doing it this way, virtually, this is the best time it could have happened because you guys already know how to do most of what we're doing today. So we are making today blocks number 1 and 3 and 6. So block number 1, let me show you where that is. So block 1 is the one that you find in the corners. There are just 4 of them, and you have a blue focus for one of the large wedges and tans for the other 3 large wedges. And this block's made entirely up of just large wedges. So we're not using any of the diamond wedges that we created in the past. Those should have all been used in the previous blocks that you made. All of the blocks that we're making this month are just large wedge blocks. Block 3 is the block that you find around the outside of the quilt. So it has 2 tan large wedges and 2 blue focused large wedges. And then block 6 is throughout the quilt, there's 9 of them, and you'll just use 4 of your blue focused dark wedges and 4 of your dark background large wedges. And you'll notice all 3 of these blocks, the corners are all done with your medium background triangles. So you should just have a bunch of medium background triangles left and a whole pile of large wedges that you cut out last week. Okay, so when you go to make these blocks, I have you starting off by making the 4 block ones, and you'll start off just like in the past, making your octagon. You start by sewing it into pairs, and if you follow the directions on your handout, I've told you how to put those pairs together. And just like last time, there's a hint that if you always sew with one of the backgrounds on top, they will all work out nicely. So lay your octagon out, sew it into pairs with your background one on top every time. Use the diagram in your handout as a guide when you lay them out, and sew it into pairs. Press towards the darker wedge in each of those pairs. Then when you sew your pairs together into halves, and this is all really familiar, we've done all of this before. You'll sew your pairs into halves, and you can just press those seams in the same direction that the others were going. And that way, when you sew your halves into the full octagon, all of those seams can go in the same direction, and that last seam you can either continue going that way and open that middle there, kind of spin the center, or you can press that last seam open too if you're more comfortable doing that. So we'll put our octagon together just like we have in the past, but now we need to stop here and we're going to do our first trim there. So we're going to stop there and trim, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so now we're ready to trim our octagon. But if you remember, we're only going to trim the 4 sides that the corners are going to get added to. So in this block, it's the 4 darker sides. We're not going to trim any of those background triangles. So I'll use my Tucker Trimmer ruler, the large one, the Tucker Trimmer 3, and I'm going to set it on my block. Now I need some guidelines. Usually I have those star points for guidelines here, but I don't have those because I've only used the large wedges. So I'm going to have to add the guidelines, and there's a couple ways I can do that. I'm going to do it using my wedge star ruler, and we went over this last month too, so this should look really familiar. We're going to put the wedge star ruler, and we're going to line up that point right there in the center of our block. And I'm lining up the diagonal line on the wedge star with my seam. And then I'm just going to go ahead and mark the center of that background wedge. And I'm going to do that for all 4 of them. Now, if you were in club last month, here in the shop, I didn't include this in my handout, but I taught kind of a cheater way to do this where we marked our rulers. So if you marked your ruler with cheater lines last month, they're going to work again this month, and you don't have to do this. So go ahead and use your cheater lines again, but I'm showing you the correct way to do it. We're going to mark all 4 of those background wedges. And we're going to put our Tucker Trimmer on top here. And I'm going to line up my main diagonal and my 9.5 diagonal with those marks I just made on my large background wedges. And now I can get my rotary cutter and I can trim up one side and across the top. All right. I need a new rotary blade. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and spin the block around. It's now going to sit in my 9.5-inch box that I've got my new guidelines on. But I'm also going to check those diagonals. The main diagonal and the 9.5 diagonal are going to line up with the marks I just made. And I'm going to trim again across the top and up the side. I really need a new blade in this one. Okay. But like I said, if you made those cheater lines, you can kind of see mine, they're getting a little faded, but you've got those cheater lines on there, you're good to go. You can just go ahead and use them again. They should line up with all of your seams if you get it set on there just right, and you won't need to do those markings. Right, so the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to go ahead and add the triangles to these 4 corners. Okay, after we've done that, then we're going to need to do another trim. So let me grab that block, and we'll show you what that looks like. So here's my completed block with the triangles added. Now for this one, I've gone ahead and grabbed, I think this is block 3 instead of block 1, but it's the same idea. So you're going to use your Tucker trimmer now to finally trim this one to 9.5 inches. And again, when we put our Tucker trimmer on there, we don't have those star points to line up our diagonals because we did all large wedges. So once again, we're going to need to mark those large wedges, and this time it is the dark large wedges. So again, if you did your cheater lines, you can see they're already there to guide you. You can just line them up with your seams and you're good to go. You can go ahead and trim across and up the side and spin it to 9.5. If you don't have cheater lines or have no idea what I'm talking about because you weren't in club last month, then you're gonna want to mark the large wedges, and there's a lot more direction on this in your Wedge Star ruler directions. This big old thing that came with the ruler that has all kinds of pictures and diagrams in it. But again, we've gone over this already, so I'm kind of breezing through it. You're gonna set your wedge ruler on there, line the center up just right. The main diagonal line here should sit on your seam, and you're gonna mark each of those large wedges right in the center, doing it the right way. Okay? So once you've marked all 4 of those, then you can take your Tucker trimmer. You can set it right on there. You can line up your main diagonal with the marks you just made, your 9.5 diagonal with the marks you just made, and they always should meet, of course, right in the center. And then if you've got your cheater lines, they should sit right there on all of your seams. And now you're gonna go ahead and trim your block to the final size, which is 9.5 inches. And I'm a horrible example. This is the shop rotary cutter that we use to cut kits, like 1,000,000 pieces at a time, so it's very dull, which I didn't realize before I started this video. So now you're gonna spin it around. It's gonna sit in that 9.5 inch box. Your diagonals will all still line up, and you're gonna trim your final 2 sides to finish your block. So from your handout, you can see you're just gonna go ahead and make 4 of those block 1s, and those are the ones in the corner. You're going to make 12 block 3s. These are the ones on the sides. And you're gonna make just 9 of the block 6s. These are the ones with your blue focus that you see throughout the middle of the quilt. Once you finish making those, you are done with all of the blocks for this quilt. Woohoo! So you're ready to start putting it together. So that leads us to assembly. I didn't give a whole lot of direction on assembly because there's not a whole lot to it, and it is in your pattern. So you are gonna have to refer to your pattern for this. The assembly, it's just lay the blocks out according to the diagram in your pattern and then sew them together. Adida's given you nice pressing directions, so I did follow those. Basically, one row presses left, the other presses right, and your seams will all nest. As far as getting these points to match, I did do a lot of pinning when I put these together. So get your fork pins or some really nice pins out and pin, pin, pin when you do those rows. And once you've got your blocks all sewn into rows, you're just gonna simply add the borders and then you are done. So if you've kept up with your homework, this last month, the blocks are really the simplest that we've made so far because they're just large wedges. So you've just got a few more blocks to make and then you can sew the whole thing together, and I can't wait to see them completed, and hopefully we'll be together again next month. So thank you guys for being understanding with this. I am going to have a Zoom meeting on Thursday, and that information should also be in the email with this video. So if you have questions, write them down, take some notes, look through your handout first, and after you've watched this video, if you still have questions, come to that Zoom meeting and we can go over any questions. I'd be happy to show you anything again, and hopefully that will be enough to get you through this last chunk of this really cool quilt. So thanks, guys.